see here is a changeover from 40 caliber to 9mm. What I have here are the parts necessary to change an XL650 from one caliber to another. First off, start from the top when these things work down. You have a shell plate for the case feeder. You have a tool head with all the appropriate dies already set in it. All you're missing here is the powder measure, which I'm going to take off the 40 and put it on here. I have a shell plate and then the associated parts that go with 9mm. And what I'll do is I'll show you how we're going to take all that apart, starting from the top. Okay, way up there on top, if we reach in, we're going to pull out this shell plate. That's for 45 ACP or 40. Take off the tube, and as we move down, move on down here, we're going to remove this purple piece, and then here is a little red piece. If I get it out of there, there it is. There's a part in here that actually feeds it to the shell plate, and then in this part right here, you can see that in there. Let me see if I can get that down to you. There's a feeder piece of aluminum here that actually get it loose. There it goes. That's part of the feed mechanism. This guy right here, this is for 40, and there'll be a corresponding one of these for 9mm. It's a little smaller in diameter. Okay, so next in our disassembly is removing the pins. There's 3 of them, and the shell plate itself, which in this model you have to put that in, and there's a little lock screw right down here, which we loosen up. That loosens that large nut in the middle. And it comes off, and then our shell plate, which is that one right there. Okay, and as you can see, nothing in there right now. This part is part of what feeds the cases in. This is your primer tube assembly. If I was changing primer size from small primers, which I'll be using, to large primers, I have to remove this, change the tube out, and then there's a rotating plate down in here, which you have to change also. But other than that, if you're changing from one caliber to another that has the same primer size, you're golden. Okay, next we're going to take off the tool assembly, remove the 2 pins, remove our safety bar, and this slides right out. So there's a whole tool assembly, tool head right there. Now I will be taking the powder assembly off of this and putting it on the other head. It's real close to what I need for 9mm as far as the drop goes, so that's why I use one for both of these. So it saves a little bit of expense there. This is your powder safety check. It allows you to check the amount of powder in each round. When you hear that, it means something's wrong. Either you got not enough powder or too little powder. So we're going to take all this off, take this off, and we'll put the new head on and we'll reinstall everything. Okay, so basically what we have is the entire machine stripped down to basics here. You can see I've got no shell plate. I've removed all the parts and pieces that make it into a 9mm, or a 40 caliber rather. Okay, so we've got all these pieces now. We need to reassemble using 9mm parts versus the 40. I should note that one thing that I've found really helpful was little plastic baggies that you can use to store all the little bits and pieces that come with each caliber, rather than using one of these conversion boxes to hold the bits and pieces. I just find it much easier to put all the little bits and pieces in one bag for storage sakes. And if I'm not using the powder measure for anything, what I can do is I can just take and simply roll this bag right up in it and put it right into the empty powder measure, and stores everything perfectly. So it's really a good handy tool. Okay, so now I've got all my 40 parts off the machine. Got all my little bits and pieces in a little baggie. I find this is probably the best way to keep them. I have my plate for the case loader, got my shell plate, and now I'm going to put all the new supplies on, starting from the bottom and working our way back up. Notice I started at the top and worked my way down to take things off. Now we're going to do just the opposite, start from the bottom and work our way up. So what I'll do is I'll put this stuff away, and then we're going to work with this over here. Okay, so now starting from the bottom, we'll install the shell plate, our accessories that go into the machine, and then our tool head, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall the powder measure device and the powder sensor device. Alright, here we go. Here's our shell plate for the 9mm. Just sits right on here. You're going to find a spot where it actually sits in a proper hole. Reinstall our deflector shield, which kicks the shells out. There's a little bitty hole in here where that goes. Right there. And the bolt that holds everything together screws right in there. Just going to tighten that down just hand tight right now. Okay, and the idea is you want your shell plate, I hope you can see that, to rotate freely without really dragging. So you can see I got a little tight. And see, if you leave it loose, it'll tighten itself right up. So we're going to take our set screw that's down here. It's right on the main hub here. Give that a half a tighten here. And just kind of hand tighten this until it just doesn't want to turn, and then back it off a little bit. Do this also. And little adjustments here make a big difference. Now there, I got it too tight, so I'm going to back it off just a hair. That's still a little tight. There, you see how that just clicks freely? That's what you want to have. So we're going to back it off just a little bit, tighten our set screw, and that job is done. Okay, now we're going to take some of our bits and pieces here. Again, working our way back up the machine. This little slide plate actually directs the new empty cartridge into the shell plate. Since it's already back, we're going to slide that right in. Don't get your hand in there. That just sits right in there. Okay. Now we're going to work on our way up. This is that little sleeve that allows 9mm to slide down onto this, which then puts them in here and then slides them into the machine. That goes right up in here. And this is aluminum on aluminum, so you don't want to have this really super tight, just snug. So you got an aluminum piece here. We're just going to take our little wrench here and give it just a bit of a tug to get it nice and snug, and that's it. And just not very much, just a little bit to tighten it in there. That's all I need. Okay. Then we have another sleeve that goes into the feeder down there. This sleeve goes, and there's a little notch in this guy, right here, and there's a notch, appropriate notch on the machine. Line those up, press it into place. Okay, and working our way up again. We're going to replace our tube. It only goes in one way, so make sure this arrow is pointing up. This sits right in here, and it sits right in the machine right there into the case feeder. That's all correct. As we move up, we now have the small 9mm plate. This also does 380, and the smaller, anything smaller than 9mm will do, but I only use it for 9mm, so that's why I marked it. This just goes in here, and you're going to put it in here, spin it until it locks into place. Okay, now we're going to install our tool head, which is right here. Now, fits in the machine this way. You have your 5 stations. This is D-prime resize, powder drop, powder check. This is your bullet seater and bullet crimp, or case crimp, I should say. One thing to notice is that on the Dillon, the powder measure also expands your case neck, and you can notice here that the case will fit through here, and this is what expands it or bells it out to make it fit properly, so you get the bullet in there. So that's always in there. It just slides right in the machine. Has 2 pins that hold it in. There's one in the back, one in the front. Okay, so these are all preset. I've preset these. I've loaded 9s before, obviously. It's preset to accept 9mm, the proper length, and I can show you how to adjust those. It's really easy. Just as you bring the machine up all the way up to the top, what you're going to do is you're going to screw this sizer die all the way down until it touches the plate, and then lock it off. Some guys like to back it off just a hair, which I do, because I don't want any pressure on the plate. And that's all you do is just tighten it down. You're good to go. This one takes a little more finicky to get your powder measure correctly sized and get your where it expands, it bells the case properly. But once you get that set, you can leave it alone. It's done. This I've actually used the same setting for all my powder checks on every tool head I've got. So I've got it set correctly one time. I know it's going to be in the correct spot. So when I put this on here, see how it's got a little spring to it right there? That's what pushes this up. If you can see this motion here, that's what pushes that up to powder check. There's a corresponding plunger in here that as it goes into the casing and it drops down in there and it pushes this up, it should push it up to where that corresponds with that slot right there. So if it's done properly and you adjusted it properly, as you push up on the machine, it's going to push this up to that point, and then it's going to push this into that slot. You can see there's a little bit of leeway there, but not a whole bunch. But if you miss it and you have like no powder, you're going to hear that. If you have over powder, it's time to check it out. Something's wrong here. If you don't hear basically nothing, you're okay. If you hear anything else, something is wrong. So these are great little tools, and you can use them for any caliber. They make these spuds in 22, I think 38 or 9mm caliber, which is this, the small one. Then they make a rifle size like a 30 caliber and a 45. I think there's 3 or 4. I think there's 4 spuds. It's either 3 or 4. Anyway, I use this one for 9mm 40s, bigger one for 45, and then you can use this for 223. You can also use the 30 caliber ones for, of course, 308, 30-06, that sort of thing. So that's how that works. Okay, then you've got your powder measure, which this just simply slides. Get these loosened up here a little bit. Slides right over that top of that and down. And you want to have it so it points directly down your line of fire here for this safety rod. So when this is hooked up properly, this should go straight down, not hanging off to the side, not canted, tilted, anything like that. So that should be properly straight. So when this is all hooked up, we'll use this this one here just to get it in there. It should hang perfectly straight just like that. And notice it's all bent to be out in the proper spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up now and just tighten that down. That's the right size. There. And once again, I've already loaded 9mm on here, so I know that they're already the right depth, and I got the right crimp or expansion on the case. Okay, so let's get this down again. Make sure that hangs straight. We're just going to relieve the strain on that and tighten it up. You just try to do it evenly on both sides. It actually will lock in properly when you get the right depth. There you go. And you can see it kind of straighten up a little bit. And then hopefully we're getting all this in here. Then on this guy, when you have this hanging properly, notice how much it takes to get that down. This should be down just a little bit more. You want to adjust this so that when you push to get your primer seated, which is on station 2 here, you want to have it so it springs back, but not overly back, so it doesn't pull it back up off the machine. Just so it comes back and actually wants to reset itself. This is part of what does that. If you have it too tight, it won't do that properly. You want it so it just has enough spring to get that done without pulling constant tension on this. Okay, so that's in there. This guy. I'm going to bring you around a little bit here. Get a better look, I hope. Okay, it's got a little keeper. These are all Allen head wrenches, so they really don't have any problem with wear. Just want to center this spud in that hole. Okay, and you can see as I bring it down, hopefully don't run into the camera here. Anyway, when you push up on this, you can see how that action causes that to happen. And basically, that's it on the exchangeover. All I have is the 3 pins left, which hold the cases in place. There's one in the back at the bullet crimp, one at the bullet seat, and one at the powder check station. And the big reason they use these pins is in case you have a problem, you're able to pull the pin out, pull the case out, and inspect your problem. So you're able to look at the case to see, well, if you're on the powder check station, something doesn't go, it buzzes on me. Not enough powder, out of powder, didn't get a powder charge, too much powder, what's the problem? I can look at it, I can measure it, I can put the proper amount in there, I can put it back in there and continue on. So it's a great idea to have these pins where you can take those out and actually fix things. But there's a changeover complete. We've done everything from bottom to top, just the way we took it apart from top to bottom. We do have to check our powder drop, and we have to check again our powder measure so that we know that this is set correctly. What I do is I take a case that's primed. I will measure out a proper load, which in this case I'm going to be loading 9mm. Right here, 9mm. I'm going to use a 124 grain round nose copper jacketed bullet. My intended speed is 900 feet per second. I'm using Hodgdon tight group powder, 4 grains, and a CCI 500 primer. This idea is really great to put this on your machine, any machine you're working on, so you know exactly what you're working with. You don't have to go back to the book or anything. This actually I got from SoCal Prepper. He does this with every time he loads, so he knows what he's loading. So there's no mistaking what I'm on. There's no mistaking what I'm using for powder. No mistaking what primers I need, and no mistaking what amount of powder I'm going to use per load. So that's a great idea. So there's your reset for 9mm. I will check the powder drop. I'll go through that in a second. I will check this when I get the proper powder in there, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so the first step in our process is of setting up the powder measure is we're going to put some tight group, our powder we're going to use for our loads. Put it right in the hopper. Now, one nice thing about the Dillon, it has a safety check on it, so that if you do not have a cartridge, empty cartridge down there, it will not spill any powder. You notice this is a fine ball type powder, so it flows really, really well out of the hopper here. I'll fill it about halfway full. It seems to be about the right amount to start with. Okay, so step one is to zero out our balance beam scale. Notice how we have everything. That's tenths of grams, that are grains, that's grains, and then tens of grains. Okay, and you want this bar to be right on the zero. You notice it's pretty darn close for me. Now, if you would need to adjust this, there is a part right here in the bottom, and I'll just screw it a couple times to make it an out adjustment. And notice how the beam no longer is zeroed. So what you do is you screw this in or out until you get this thing to zero out. Okay, you can see that it's pretty darn close for me. So now we have everything in zeros. It's what they call a tare weight. There's nothing in the bucket. We have 0, 0, 0, and a balance beam. Okay, so now we're going to take our little cup here, and we're going to go up to the machine, and I'll actually physically move this up and down to get one powder drop in here and then measure it. Okay, I'll take it back over here and I'll put this on 4 grains and we'll measure it. So I'll go ahead and do that and be right back. Okay, so now we've got this set on 4 grains. Notice it's 0 tenths, 4 grains, and 0 tens of grains. And I want you to notice how little powder this really is. Let me take this off of here. This is too much powder, but I want to show you how really little amount of powder that really is for a 9mm. So it doesn't take very much to make this go bang. So I'm going to show you this, and then this is actually too much powder for that particular load. See how it's way up there on top? So I'm going to adjust the powder drop, and you do that back here. There's a little nut on the back. When you screw it this way, it'd be counterclockwise as you're looking at it from the back, or clockwise from the front. It reduces the size of the chamber that allows powder to drop. When you screw it the other way, it increases the size of the powder drop, the chamber, so it allows more powder to come down. So I'm going to crank this down about 1 full turn, maybe a half a turn, and then I'll remeasure again, and we'll be right back. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, the powder drop comes right here. The thing I wanted to show you was I put the cup under here. Every time I adjust the machine, I want to have it so that it does consistent drops. So what I do is I run this 2 or 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then I dump that back in. So my cup is empty. Then on my 4th one will be the actual charge. And what this does, it allows me to make approximate changes and consistent changes. Because if I do that every time, if I take the first drop, it's going to be either compressed or expanded, or I don't know how that it goes in here, but if you adjust it, you can't take the powder out, so you obviously have stuff in there. So if I compress it, I'm actually having more powder than I want. So if I do it a couple times, I'm cleaning all that out and recharging it each time. And again, you can see basically how little powder that is. Okay, so back over the scale we go. Okay, now you can see I'm getting closer. I'm still off. A little more adjusting and I'll be there. Now every time I'm doing this, I'm doing the same thing with the powder drop. I'm doing it 3 or 4 times, dumping that back in the hopper, okay, and then coming back and doing my single load and then going back to the scale. So this is the only tedious part of this whole process. It takes a little bit of time, but once you get it set and doing it correctly like this, you really have a good idea of how this thing is going to drop every time. So I'm going to go do it again. I'm going to go back and remeasure, make another adjustment, try to get that down to where it throws that 0 2 or 3 times consistently after doing 4 or 5 drops. Okay, so after my 3rd time of checking, check that out, right on the money. So now I know that my machine is dropping 4 grains every time, very consistently, and it'll be within, you know, a quarter of a grain. I mean, not a quarter, but 0.05 of a grain. If you measure this out, you know, you can see that 0.05, not very much. Not very much at all. So, there you go. That's the powder charge, all dialed in. One thing I do before I get started, I'm lucky enough to have air in my shop, so I take it and blow it off a little bit. It'll be a little noisy. Be sure everything's ready to go. Now I will load the primer tube rather. I will make sure and set the powder check, load up my bullets, do a practice run here with one casing to make sure my seating is correct, and then I'll be ready to rock and roll. Alright, see you in a bit. One thing I did want to show you is when you got your 4 grains all set up, we're going to load one in a practice round here just to show you. I'm going to take this, we take that little bit of powder that's in there, and I want to show you, get this out of here, how that little bit of powder really does fill up that space. There we go. So you can see that even 4 grains, even though it's not very much, really fills up that space in a 9mm cartridge. And of course your bullet's going to come down to about here, so it'll be just about right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this round right here that has the powder in it. It's not primed. Okay. Take it over here to our loader again. Put it in station 3, which is our powder check station. Get that over here for you to see, hopefully. Sorry about the camera movement there, guys. And I'm going to adjust the powder measure. I'm going to do that by loosening up the little nut on top. And you run that down into the machine. I'm just going to run this up. All the way. Boy, that's pretty darn close. Get this off the stand here, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. You can see with the machine all run up there, all the way at the top of the stroke, that as I look at that measurement, it's pretty darn close. So consistently, as I come down, you can see that's pretty darn close to where I want it to be. What I'm going to do is just adjust this up a little bit, hold this, push that, try to rotate that a little bit up to where it's exactly centered. Hopefully you can see me do that. And now it's pretty darn close to center, and that's what you want to have. So if you have any problems with your cartridge as far as being over powdered or under powdered, you'll be able to tell with the powder check system here. So I'm going to tighten this nut down. I'm going to reset the machine and check it again just to make sure. And I know, because I've measured exactly 4 grains, that this doesn't throw 4 grains. If it throws under or over, I'll be able to tell. So this is a great system on the 650. They also have it for the 1050. I'm not sure about their other loaders, but I'm assuming that you can do it with some of the other loaders. But because it has 5 stations, you're able to use this powder check, and it's really a good deal. Okay, so here are today's components for the loading session. We have 9mm brass, all cleaned, ready to go. We have our Hodgdon tight group powder. We have CCI small pistol primers, and our Extreme bullets out of Nevada, 124 grain round nose. So we are ready to load them up and get going. Okay, so there's our first test round right here. We've measured it out for overall length. And you can see we're well within specs at 1.15 or 1.128. Get that in there. So we're all ready to go. It's got a nice crimp on it. Everything seemed to go well in the first test round. I'll run a couple more test rounds and then we're good to go. Okay, nothing new here. We're going to take our primer tray. Up our box of primers. Put the tray in here. Turn upside down, and we're going to rotate all these so they're all the right way. One stubborn one there. Then for the Dillon press, they want them to load the other way, so we're going to turn it over and actually load out of this side. So I'll go ahead and get my tubes loaded up and ready to go. Okay, so we're going to load the primer tube. And I like to run the primer warning gauge all the way through there, so make sure it fills it up. Replace that for the next time. That's ready to go. Next step is to drop some cartridges in the hopper. Throw about 200 in there, maybe 150. And turn that on. Okay, ready to rock. I think we're going to get going here. Primer in. Got a primer there, we're good. Okay, that means I've loaded about 90 or so bullets. Time to take a break, reload everything, and I'll be right back. Now those 90 only took me about 10 minutes to do, considering I'm doing camera changes and everything. Not too bad. Just want to show you that the case gauge is still an important part of making sure that these are loaded correctly. They need to be flat across the top and not protruding from the end. So you can see that they're not protruding there, and they slide in and out really easy. You have set your machine up correctly. So do invest in some of these. These are Dillon case gauges. You can get, I believe Lyman makes them, Wilson makes them, and I think Dillon makes them. They're really not, they're not that bad. They're $12, $15 or whatever. They're 20 bucks even, but they're worth their weight in gold because you can check to make sure every load is correct. Also, what you'll do at the end of each loading session should take all your rounds, check each of them to make sure that the primer's in correctly and that they are flush with the top. This way you know they'll fit on almost any weapon, guaranteed. Well, here we are, job done. 500 rounds of 9mm in just over an hour. There's the empty bullet box. There's all the empty primer trays. And just to show you how accurate this little puppy is, I haven't touched the powder measure at all. I've been checking them every 100 rounds. I put one in. There's the powder in. And look at that. Oh, you can't see it. Go here where you can. It is still on the money. So that's 500 rounds. Perfectly done. A little over an hour, about an hour and 5 minutes. Not counting my setup time, which took a little longer because I was trying to tell you about it. But even if you figured an hour and a half for the whole deal, changing over from one caliber to another and loading up 500 rounds, complete with doing the primer tube, setup, everything, not bad. That's a good day's shooting right there, 500 rounds. Alright, you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. 216 Papa Bravo is out.